It's great. It's great to see all your faces. So welcome. My name is Charmaine Magumbe, and I am right now the chairperson of Community Race Relations. I just wanted to take time out to acknowledge that this is Asian Heritage Month, and the ribbon here is to remember May the 20th is to remember anti-racism for the Asian community, especially during COVID. There was a spike in hatred towards our Asian population. So please remember that the month of May is Asian Heritage Month. So I want to do a shout out to Patricia, who's been very actively posting on the different things that are happening in the Asian community. So thank you. Having said that, I just wanted to introduce to you our coordinator of CRRC, Czarina Garcia. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Czarina. There's so much to say about her, a lot of good things, of course. And basically that she's an amazing person who's done a fabulous job of getting this all organized and in place. So thank you so much for that, Czarina. Czarina is a second generation Filipino Canadian woman who's been living in Peterborough for a few years, since 2018. And she's been working throughout her stay here, Quick being one place, and Quick, and where she was the communication lead and education program coordinator. She also worked at the Community Counseling Resource Center. And she's also been studying at Trent University, doing a double major in international development and environmental resource studies. She has done numerous volunteering work, the Nourish program project being one, Green Up, the center, and again, Kawartha World Issues, the Community Counseling Resource Center, and with various students, Trent student groups at Trent. She is an amazing person, a mother, partner, I think a daughter. Am I right? I don't know. I hope you've been a daughter to somebody, but of course. Anyhow, with no further ado, we introduce Czarina.
Can you hear me? Oh, I can hear me. Awesome. Okay, just give me a moment, please. As my tablet chooses to restart, I apologize. I can't do these things without notes. Super organized like that, but to a fault. You know, it's funny, I could have just said good evening, everyone, because that was the first thing written down. But here we are. So good evening, everyone. I'm going to start a little bit on a somber note, but with good reason, and I hope you can all join me in this. So I'd like to begin by first taking a moment of silence for Pearlie Young, Ruth Whitfield, Margus Morrison, Andre McNeil, Aaron Salter, Geraldine Talley, Catherine Macy, Roberta Drury, Hayward Patterson, and Celestine Cheney. Those are the names of the Black lives that were taken senselessly by an 18-year-old terrorist or white supremacist at a grocery store shooting in Buffalo last weekend. May they rest in peace. We'll give a moment of silence. Thank you. So please join me in opening up the space in a good way as we acknowledge and give thanks to the land. We are grateful as we gather here in Nogojiwanong, Peterborough, located on Williams Treaty 20, the traditional land and territory of the Mississauga, Anishinaabe, and Chippewa nations. It's collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We are blessed to gather in the territory that has been cared for and stewarded by the Williams Treaty First Nations. And may we show our respect to the ancestors who lived on and loved this land before us, and the descendants with whom we share this land today. Speaking as a second-generation Filipina ex-Canadian and settler here, it is both an honorable blessing, but also a stolen privilege to be walking on this land, to work on this land, to feed from its soils, to drink from its rivers, and to breathe life from its wind. But whether we are settlers, arrivants, or natives to this territory, every one of us here today was born with the inherited intergenerational impacts of colonization. We are all navigating the current of this capitalist waste stream and this historical context that continues to uphold our stolen privilege or our oppression. So wherever our diverse origins lie, may we continue to gather in a good way where we can work on doing better by each other, for and with all our relations. May we honor the Mississauga, Anishinaabe, and Chippewa nations, not just in our thoughts, but in our words as well, and in our actions most especially. And may we respect and learn from, listen to, and build relationships with the First Peoples of this land so that we may continue to practice and embody positive race relations towards truth, reconciliation, and decolonization. Miigwech. So I'm honored and humbled to share this time and space as we gather for our Community Race Relations, AGM, and panel on Voices for Action Against Racism in Peterborough, Nogojiwanong. And I especially thank you for taking your time to be with us on the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia, as we recognize the intersections of social justice and human rights that are strongly woven into race relations as a part of our human experience. Today marks CRRC's return to an in-person setting after 2 years of virtual community making. And this chapter of CRRC's journey is earmarked by the immense work and support of our small but mighty board of directors, Charmaine Magumbe, Debbie Harrison. Oh, wait, where did she go? Okay, Debbie Harrison, and Kale White, who could not be with us today. But none of this would even be happening right now without the ongoing communication support from Ben Wolf, who's up in the balcony, who made the accessible hybrid format possible. And of course, we are able to come together in a good way in this space, thanks to Reverend Julie Stoneberg and Leslie Manaugh here at UFP BIS. And I also want to thank our volunteers whose many hands made light work. Thank you so much. And to our community partners whose ideas, check-ins, encouragement, and support were all inspirations toward our community gathering today. And last but not least, my heart and gratitude go out to Angela Connors, CRRC's former executive director, whose work for the entirety of 2021 is the bread and butter of the work we are reporting this evening. Without the tremendous effort Angela put into CRRC last year and in Nogojiwanong Peterborough at large, I would not have had the foundation of networks that brought this gathering together. Miigwech. Now, it goes without saying that CRRC is very blessed to have an incredible team and community that continues to support our meaningful work toward positive race relations. But on the other side of this empowering and energizing work, we are constantly met with the heaviness and complexity of addressing critical social justice issues that impact the lives of Black, Indigenous, Brown, racialized individuals and families here in Nogojiwanong. On the side of business, like AGM business, we are gathering to uphold our responsibility to the people and institutions of Peterborough by demonstrating our commitment to the continued function as a legitimate, accountable, and transparent nonprofit community-funded organization. But on the side of our programming and community making, we are gathering to uplift the voices for action against racism in Nogojiwanong, to show you how our work addresses contentious race relations by transforming the narrative through decolonization and BIPOC-centered practice, and to demonstrate how your ongoing support allows us to deliver impacts and objectives for healing community through advocacy, education, and collaboration. So before we jump in for the evening, I'm going to do something a little bit unconventional here, but bear with me. I invite you to join me in a grounding exercise by taking 3 collective breaths together. I know it's ambitious. There were so many on the virtual setting that I saw, but I mean, I think you can all join in with that. And the intention for that is to ground the space, to come together before loading up on AGM business, because in less than an hour, you're about to get your hearts filled by sisters who are heavily lifting the weight of racial justice leadership in our community, including Yvonne Lai, Kemi Acapo, Sarah Lewis, Danielle Adderley, Patricia Wilson, and of course, there's John Lyons, who is a white man, but we love him nonetheless. Y'all came here because you knew what you were signing up for. So you know this can get heavy, right? I feel it. Anyways, join in if you feel called to, as I guide us through some soul-loving, mind-grounding, and heart-centering collective breath work. But if that's not your jam, that's totally cool. You're welcome to join in or just observe so that we can breathe one collective breath together. So getting comfortable, relaxed, whether you're sitting or you're standing. Settling into the space. I invite you to close the eyes if you're called to. When your lungs are full at the top of the next inhale, release the breath through the nose, counting down from 3, finding our collective natural pace. Inhale, 2, exhale. Last breath, inhale, 1, exhale, releasing the breath deeply and out through the nose, coming back and returning your attention to center. Feel free to shake it out, any tension and holding. Thank you for sharing in the collective breath with me today. As we absorb the knowledge and information shared tonight, may you take what resonates and leave what doesn't. So without further ado, I will call up our board chair, Charmaine Magumbe, again for the notices and to call CRC's AGM to order.
Thank you, Czarina, so much for that introduction. The notices pertain to you receiving the AGM notice of this meeting 30 days prior to May 17th, and that you did have received the bylaws for CRRC. So those are the notices. And with that, we will start our AGM. So is it Debbie? Okay. And Debbie is our treasurer, secretary of CRRC. Thank you.
Thanks, Charmaine. Yes, in this function, I am your board secretary and acting treasurer. You'll see me through a few of the agenda items today. So thank you for joining us online and for being here in person. So you received an agenda in the mail. It included approval of the minutes of last year's meeting on May 2nd, 2021. It included a copy of the bylaws as well for review. Sorry, we did not have that as a separate item on the agenda. So there is modification to the agenda, but we did add the, we've made some changes to our bylaws that we would like you to review and approve. You'll have a report from our chair. Czarina will present the annual report. Sam and I will present a financial report, and then we will proceed to our board elections. Can I have a motion either from the floor here in person or online? And perhaps, Ben, you can tell me if anybody puts up a hand to approve the agenda as modified. Patricia? Thank you. Seconded? Koji, thank you. And we're not worrying about the little cards. I know you have them. You can flash them and I'll see them more quickly, but that's fine. All in favor? Anyone abstaining? Any against? Approved. For the minutes, you received a copy of the May 2nd minutes. It was a Zoom meeting last year, and we shared a number of pieces of information. You have received it in your package. I won't review it in detail. Are there any questions rising from the minutes of last year? No? A motion to accept the minutes as presented. Thanks, Charmaine. Seconded. I'm not sure, we may need someone present from last year. That might need to be me. But thank you, Tricia. All in favor? Against? Abstaining? Approved. Sorry for moving along quickly, Ben. Folks that are online, just let us know if they have any questions. So far, it looks like we're good. Super. All right. At this point, we will have a look at our bylaws. I did bring a few copies of notes. If anyone are interested, I can perhaps give them to Charmaine. Just wave your hand if you'd like to see some of the detailed notes on the changes that we're making to the bylaw. So in the sort of spirit of accessibility, clear information, and clarifying governance issues, we have made some changes to the bylaws. And last year, a committee was struck, I chaired, and we were joined by Reem Ali, diversity director at the City of Peterborough, as well as our executive director, Angela Connors. Our bylaws were shared virtually, so you will have access to a copy. We did note that this year, Ontario's Not-for-Profit Corporation Act, or ONCA, took effect last fall. And some of the committee's changes are based on ONCA recommendations. Corporations have 3 years to ensure their bylaws reflect these changes, and they will be offering soon some tools to help nonprofits update their bylaws. So we opted not to do a full review at this time. We waited while the changes have been made and legal ease, we decided to wait until the nonprofit friendly tools were made available. So this fall, we will be doing another bylaw review and including those changes then. We did, however, make a few changes that are in the spirit of that. And of course, we also made a few changes, mostly to the presentation of the bylaw and in an accessible format to be in accordance with the communications standard of the accessibility AODA of Ontario. So our changes are highlighted. If you made a copy, I won't go through all in detail. Some are quite minute, but I will highlight a few ones that are significant. We did change item 5.4 to add not only any person who resides in Peterborough City or County, but also who studies or works. And this reflected our practice going back some time, but we put this into our bylaws. We pondered a bit on what the well-being of CRRC was and what harm, how we would judge a member had done harm. So we were asking some deep questions about the nature of our bylaws and making them specific. So we did add a clause in there specifying how we would notify someone that caused harm and the time period within which they could have to respond and how they would be treated. And that is in 5.6. We made a change in our board membership in 6.0. We increased membership to 9 from 7 in the previous years to increase capacity on our board because we feel there's a lot of work to do in the coming year. We also reflected on the role of members in 6.6 to clarify that in fact the power of the membership or the power of CRRC resides with its membership and not with its board. You are the ones that vote us in and assign us the task for the year to represent you. But in fact, any significant changes should come from the membership. So we clarified the process that should the board choose to appoint someone, say we lost a member during the year, we needed to appoint an additional member, that it was only temporary appointment, and that in fact, the next AGM or special meeting, the membership would then decide if that person was going to continue. I welcome you to read through some of the other changes. I think I'll leave it at that, some of our important ones, and open it up if you have any questions. And Ben, please let me know if there are any questions in the chat. I know bylaws can be a dry thing, but they are important. They are the skeleton upon which we build our organization. If there are no questions, nothing online, Ben? No? Great. So can I have a motion either in the chat box or from the floor to approve the bylaws as presented, as amended? Koji, thank you. And seconded? Thank you, Tricia. And that is it for the moment. I believe I'm passing it back to Czarina. Thank you.
I think it's the next slide. Oh, no, that's Charmaine.
Okay. So my chair's report is written in the annual AGM, and just wanted to highlight a couple of things that happened during 2021. You could say the unfortunate, fortunate continuation of after the George Floyd, post-era George Floyd incident, the ugliness of racism was exposed with his death. And still, of course, to this day, as the history of anti-Black racism is alive and well, as Czarina has pointed out with the 9 recent deaths of senseless murder of 9 innocent people that has happened recently. There is a continuing work that is needed to be done almost anywhere in the world regarding anti-racism, and especially here in Peterborough. With that, because of that ugliness of what racism looks like, we did get a very, very strong support from the Peterborough community in the sense of donations. So much so that in the first time in 40 years, CRRC was able to have, starting in 2020, June, a full-time staff, and that was the first time. And also the support of the city of Peterborough, also increasing their funding in 2021 so that we could continue having that full-time staff. And that's where Angela was first hired, part-time, then went to full, and then continuing now with Czarina. So that we are grateful. So because we do need, this work is tremendous. And just having one full-time staff is like just a drop in the bucket. So we really appreciate that. Another thing first that has happened is that because of the need was so great, the demand was so great, and the community of Peterborough really wanted to do more than just, yes, we had the biggest rally, BLM, Black Lives Matter rally after the George Floyd murder, but continuing, they did definitely donations, but continuing onto that, there was a big cry for workshops in the community, and our director, our ED, Angela, met that challenge. And we were really grateful that she was able to step up to the plate and do the workshops, and had a very positive feedback that there was numerous times where people would go to workshop and really learned a lot and wanted to learn more. And Angela was able to meet that need. So we're really grateful for that. Another first was our first Black History Month was virtual. And we had, the theme was healing mind, body, and soul. Drop everything and dance. We had a virtual African dance. We had Dr. Nicole, where's her last name? Can't see it. Anyhow, from Nicole Bonnie, who was from the CEO of the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Society, who spoke on achievements of equity and by Black leaders in Ontario. And we've had Rosemary Sadlers, who's came to speak about the history of Black History Month. So having said that, again, another first for us was September 30th, 2020, which was the first National Truth and Reconciliation Day that we had in Canada. And especially that was with the discovery of the loss of 215 innocent Indigenous children. It was, there need to be something as a country that we needed to honor the residential school children and the intergenerational trauma that is happening throughout the Indigenous community. Having said that, the city of Peterborough had a bus that was painted orange with Every Child Matters, and we supported them in that. And our Angela, our ED at the time, said that it was, I believe that it's a wonderful option and a visible statement for the city to make that will generate conversation. And she continued to say the road to reconciliation won't be straightforward. So again, there's a lot of work to be done with race relations here in Peterborough. Having said that, the work continues because unfortunately, in 2020, just the report, I guess, came out just this year that Peterborough had the highest hate crime in the country. And having said that, it's not the first time, unfortunately, that we've had that statistics on us. A combination of too with COVID, the increase with the Asian hate crimes, but a lot of the hate crimes right now in Peterborough were race related. So we have our work to do in Peterborough to work together as a community with our partners to really face the challenge of how we become anti-racist here in Peterborough. So thank you to the board, Debbie, Angela, we had Crystal, we had Jeremy, Niles, we had Ashanti who are on our board. So thank you for them being on the board and all the work that they've done. So having said that, it is my last time to be, my term is up. So it is the last year to be on CRRC as the chairperson. So thank you so much for being here and much loved.
All right, so I'm going to go over the annual report, which was released 2 weeks ago and would have been sent out to all of the members and folks who had subscribed to our newsletter. And just to sort of reiterate what I had mentioned earlier, the work that I'm reporting is not work that I was involved in. So this is really a report on everything that had been done in 2021 through Angela's leadership, as well as the board members, Charmaine Magumbe, Debbie Harrison, K.O. White, and those who were on the board during 2021, but were not with us when I was recruited. So I just wanted to refer folks to the website if they haven't already, because I know that it is sometimes easier to have a visual copy on hand. I'm just going to walk us through it. The first page is the annual report cover, which is the first on the slide there. And so for folks who are attending virtually, it's the one on the furthest left. Then the table of contents is really, it's just there to help guide us along. But you'll see that it also includes our land acknowledgement, information about CRRC, including the members and our contact information. It also includes the mission statement, which is iterated on our bylaws, the chair's report, which was shared by Charmaine. And then there's 2 pages on overcoming challenges. And so that's what I'm going to be speaking a little bit more about tonight. And the challenges that were experienced last year by CRRC were things that I had definitely uncovered by going through some of the things in my onboarding process. Recognizing as well that some of the things were very obvious and visible as we navigate the social justice climate in Peterborough, recognizing the need for anti-racism work, recognizing the need for diversity training, anti-oppression, anti-hate, and anti-racism. But I didn't realize how overwhelming that need was until I stepped into this role and saw the great demand from the community to be doing this work, because they had recognized within their own systems, within their own institutions, within their own organizations, their small businesses, their medium businesses, their large businesses, that there was a problem. And I say that because it's work that we want to continue to do. It's work that I am continuing to do. But I also just wanted to let folks know that in stepping into and transitioning into this role, there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be done first before I can start offering those trainings again. But I do recognize that the need is there. And so I just wanted to echo that because it was a problem or a challenge last year to meet that demand. We had hired our first part-time administrator as well throughout the summer, Ropa Fadso Mangwari. And so that was also a first for CRRC, and something that I would consider an accomplishment as we attempted to meet that challenge. And I think that Ropa and Angela definitely did that very well. CRRC also had to respond to challenges that were widely felt by, I would say, every member in the community, but at CRRC specifically, because of the uncovering of the Indigenous children's remains in Kamloops, and then all of the other residential schools that had been uncovered thereafter. And so in saying that, I just wanted to really highlight that over the challenges that CRRC had overcome last year, because I'm kind of looking at it from like a secondhand sort of perspective. I recognize that they're there. A lot of them are obvious, but you can definitely see more of a detailed report on that in the annual report. And I think it's on pages. Yeah, you can see it there. I'm not gonna try to find it because it's not on the sheet in front of me. Another thing that I also wanted to mention was the highlights and impact. So this is after the overcoming challenges. So yes, okay, there's some things that are a little bit sad and heavy, but at the same time, Angela and Ropa and the board did such an amazing job putting CRRC out there, creating a network for folks to feel supported and advocated for in the community, especially as a racialized person. I myself felt that as a community member, as a racialized community member, I had nothing to do with CRRC last year, as you know, just sometimes attending workshops that were available publicly. But aside from that, I saw it. I got to witness that. I got to participate in some of the things through social media. And in saying that, I think that those highlights and impacts really rippled out into the community in that way. So some of the things that we see on the screen here on the furthest right image is the Word of the Week social media series, which was launched last summer. And as you can see in the sort of like image bubble there are some words there. And really what Ropa and Angela had done for that campaign was to unpack these really big concepts and really big terms and make them digestible for folks so that they could understand what it means and use it. Use that language so that they could empower their words and empower their messaging, communicate their experiences. Because honestly, like for me, 2 years ago, I didn't even know what a microaggression was. And yeah, like it was through Angela that I was able to learn some of these terms. And that gave me access to empower my own voice as a racialized person and really advocate for myself, understanding that the experiences that I experienced, which were very deeply tied to like my racial identity, there was context behind that I didn't understand when I was a child. I didn't understand when I was walking into predominantly white-centered spaces. And yeah, I mean, like it's just one of those things that I definitely recognize. This is one of the reasons why I'm here today. It's because this is the work that I continue to do, and I want to continue sharing that work and really moving forward with the legacy that Angela and Ropa had left for us from 2021. There's quite a bit of other impacts. I think the one that's really like in my mind to note is that last year, Angela hosted 70 trainings and workshops. Like, can you imagine? And in doing so, she was able to raise over $25,000 in service and trainings revenues for CRRC. That is essentially what it helped us to do the work that we're doing, as well as to hire Ropa on the team. So I just wanted to mention as well that this is a collaborative effort. It's the demand for this work. It's that people in the community are seeing this and recognizing and reaching out to us and saying, hey, we want to work with you. And that's really what is allowing us to move forward against racism in the work that we do. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the rest of the report. Those were really just the highlights. And then Debbie and our bookkeeper, Sam from Sadler House, will be going through the financial and administration report. But I also just wanted to refer you as well to some of the other pages in the annual report. So I highly recommend that you download the copy, or I mean, you can really just reach out to me and I can send you a visual of it so you don't actually have to download it and use up storage. But there's lots of good information, resources in there that you can use. Yeah, so that's the annual report. Are there any questions? Okay, amazing. So I'll call up Debbie and I'll also cue in Sam just to get ready, and Debbie will call you up, Sam.
Sam, up on screen. This is my first time to ever do this, co-host with someone virtually. Let's hope this works. So I'm here presenting in an interim basis. I want to thank Shanti Rajanatnam, who I hope, Shanti, you're with us online. Shanti was our treasurer from June 2020 until March, just past 2022. And wasn't able to continue the rest of her term, but we thank her for all of her work in really formalizing a very informal financial structure. We have never had audited statements, but thanks to Shanti and Angela's work and Sam, who's coming online, and lately Czarina joining in, we are preparing to have our first audited books. This summer, we will be auditing these statements that you're about to look at today. And that's great for our financial future and looking for funds from various donors. So I guess we can't have, can we have her on sound?
I'm wondering if you can hear me. Hello?
Okay. Thank you, Sam. You're with
Yes.
us.
Okay, great. Perfect.
Pass the word to you.
Okay, so I have in front of myself the Finance and Administration report, which is the profit and loss. So for folks who have it in front of them, that's what I'll be referring to tonight. So this is for January 2021 to December of 2021. As was mentioned previously, CRRC has received funds from the city and has also gotten that increased recently, which is amazing. So that's that first line there for City Community Services Grant. Below that is donations and fundraising. That includes individuals as well as organizations. And as it was mentioned in the past few years, that has been increased due to community support. And also feel free, if at any time I'm going too quickly, to stop me and ask a question. But underneath that is membership fees. So folks who, from my understanding, want to join the board or have voting rights and things like that need to pay towards having membership fees. Below that is service training revenue. So as was mentioned previously by Czarina, the over 70 workshops that was hosted was able to provide about $25,000 of revenue. And then below that line for the last section for income is the Trent levy. So students who are full-time undergraduate students at Trent University pay a fee in order to become members of CRRC. And so those funds of almost $20,000 is where that comes from. So total revenue is around $86,000. And then in terms of expenses, we have a few more lines. So the first one is under advertising, printing, and promotion. This line from 2021 was specifically for the website. Below that is bank charges. So when you have like paper copies sent of something from your bank or EFT transfers, sometimes there's some charges in addition to that. Below that is benefits. So benefits is health and dental benefits for the full-time staff member. Underneath that, contracted honorarium is specifically for speakers fees for events that CRRC had hosted that year. Then beneath that is dues and subscriptions. The amount of money of about $500 is specifically for QuickBooks, which Czarina has done a lot of work with me on, and Debbie has been in some meetings with me as well. They're getting some financials in order. So that is actually where this report comes from, which is great. And also processes payroll and things like that. The line below of only $3.43 is levy refund. So CRRC is a levy group who can have students request a refund from them. The students have various reasons for doing so, but it looks like there were only 3 people last year who requested that refund. Then below that you have office expenses. So that's basic things like paper, ink, office supplies, things like that. The next section is specifically for payroll. So there's wages. There was a full-time staff member as well as part-time, as was mentioned. Also communications and technical staff. And then remittances is basically the taxes that you need to pay on folks' payroll, like EI and CPP. The next section is programming. So this is for events, things like Black History Month and things like that. The line below, rent or lease payments. So this line is a little bit higher than usual. The only thing was there were multiple payments in one year for multiple years of rent. So on average, it's actually closer to $2,000, but checks were cashed at just a certain time. So that's why it looks a little bit higher that year. Then the line below, CRRC got a cell phone. So the cost of having that cell phone is around $1,200. And then the line below that is travel. So those are things outside of just like a person going into work. It's things such as needing like bus or transit to get from the office to maybe different events or hosting trainings and things like that. And then the last line is actually another income section, and it's just interest earned through the bank account. So the overall profit was actually about $79,000 last year. So CRC made some funds last year, which is great.
Thank you, Sam. Do we have any questions either in our chat box or from the floor about the budget or about our profit loss statement from last year? Yes, Barbara. Would you like to answer, Sam, or shall I?
Sorry, could you repeat? I couldn't hear.
Is the grant from the city a one-time or a recurring grant?
That's a recurring grant. So I'm not sure how many years CRC has had that. Maybe Charmaine has that answer. But from my understanding, it has been increased and is happening again next year as well.
Thanks for your question, Barbara. Any other questions? Any questions, Ben, in our chat? Great. So we would like a motion, and thank you, Sam, for your presentation. We appreciate all your work in helping us to pull together our books. And so now I would like someone to make a motion to accept our statement as presented. Jordan, thank you. Seconded. Thank you, Barbara. All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Anything in the chat box? Ben? All good? Excellent. They are adopted. Thank you very much. And we'll be taking them to the auditor this year. And we'll look forward in future AGMs to presenting audited statements. I do have a few copies of this year's current budget. We won't be presenting it, but just to give you a bit of information, we're projecting income this year of $76,000. We're projecting total expenses of $82,000 approximately, and carrying about a $6,000 deficit this year. I do have copies. Again, I'll leave them with Charmaine. Just wave your hand if you would like to see a copy. If you're online, please just put that in the chat. We'd be happy to send you a copy. You're our members, you have right information. So now, before we proceed with the next item on our agenda, which is board elections, I would like to take a moment to recognize someone whose dedication to CRC has gone beyond a typical volunteer commitment, someone who has given countless hours of her time to fight racism and provide advocacy support to racialized members of our community. I'm not alone here. I'm joined by board members who may not be able to be here tonight, who are online, to present something very special. Please join me. Charmaine Gumby is our outgoing chair, and we couldn't let the occasion pass without recognizing her outstanding contributions to CRC over the last decade. This year, we began the process of evolving our board from a working board to a governance model. And while many individuals have contributed their time to provide support when the demand for services outstripped CRC staffing budgets, Charmaine's commitment has been lasting and profound. She has been a committed chair, providing day-to-day support to the coordinator and leading board members through our monthly agendas. Her leadership has always helped steer the organization in fulfilling our mission to support BIPOC community members experiencing exclusion, and her amazing network has meant that she always knew that new family that needed support at school or a business owner that was ready to contribute. So Charmaine, please accept this print from Indigenous artists. As a token of our thanks for all your work. I'm sure a photographer would like a photo.
Sure. Thank you.
And I left it open. Are you about the artist? Yes, I heard the question. Betty Albert is a Cree from Northern Ontario. Has spent time on Vancouver Island, developing her interest in art and spirituality. And circumstances eventually brought her back to her Native American father, discovering her birthright as Cree. And so this was an artist that's being carried currently at Lyons Art Gallery. We hope that you love it, the Three Sisters.
Yes, I do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'll say my words. I have to do the adjournment. So
You want to do it then?
yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So now it's my pleasure to introduce our MC for this evening's program, who will also conduct our board election, Yvonne Lai. Yvonne is the Director of Community Development at the New Canadian Centre Peterborough and has been working there since 2009. She and the NCC have been close partners of Community Race Relations Committee since that time. So we're very pleased that she could join us this evening. Plus, she's just come back from a trip. So we're really thankful you joined us. Yvonne moved to Canada from Singapore in 1998 to attend Trent University, where she studied psychology and English. Yvonne also has an MA and a PhD in psychology from York University, and her graduate work was based on assessing immigrant needs in small urban communities and patterns of community engagement. In 2017, Yvonne was a recipient of the Greater Peterborough Chamber of Commerce's 4 Under 40, designed to recognize 4 individuals in our community who are under the age of 40 and who are making their mark in the Peterborough area. I know Yvonne to be a committed community member who works tirelessly towards building an inclusive and welcoming Peterborough for all its citizens. Please join me in inviting Yvonne to the podium.
Thank you very much, Debbie. And congratulations to the CRRC for 40 years of excellent service to the community. Let's hope there's another 40 more that will come. So thank you very much for the honor of being your MC for this evening to support the board elections, as well as to moderate this evening's panel on Voices for Action Against Racism in Peterborough. So what we'll get started with now is the election of CRRC's Board of Directors by going over the eligibility criteria and the voting process. And then we will go on to the election of board members who are running for re-election, and then to the election of new candidates. So for voting eligibility and for process. So voting is open to all of you who are current members of the CRRC. So if you're not sure if you are, your current membership status is in good standing, you would have completed and submitted the membership form to CRRC, as well as paid the $10 membership fee by 6:50 p.m. today to be eligible to vote. So if you are in good standing, you're entitled to 1 vote per question, and you will show your vote by raising your blue voter card if you're voting in person, or if you are voting on Zoom, to use the raise hand function. So we will have 2 scrutineers to count the votes, Czarina and Charmaine. I will count the votes for both the in-person and virtual process. So please keep your hands raised and your cards up until the count is complete. If you are making a motion or seconding it, since I can't see everybody and I don't know everybody in the room, can I please ask that you just state your name for the record? Are there any questions about the process? Doesn't look like it. No further questions. Then we will begin with the board candidates who are running for re-election. So this year, CRRC has 3 board members who have completed their 2-year terms. This year, Debbie Harrison will be running for re-election. May I get a motion to re-elect Debbie Harrison to the CRRC Board of Directors? Thank you. May I get your name? Lady in red. Sia. Thank you. Thank you, Sia. And can I get another member to second the motion? Patricia, thank you very much. Those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstaining? Carried. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Debbie. So thank you also to outgoing members of the CRRC board for their commitment to to the organization, to KO White, as well as to Charmaine Magumbe. And so next we will begin with the election of new candidates for the CRRC board. So this year there are 7 candidates for vacant board positions. There will not be a vote, just a motion to accept the slate. So what I will do first is to present the candidates by calling on each of you by name. And candidates, when your name is called, you're invited to stand up if you are joining us here in person, or if you are joining us virtually, to unmute, to share a little bit about who you are and why you're interested in joining the board. And then when you're done, you can sit back down or unmute. So after all the candidates have been presented, then I will call for a motion from the membership to accept the slate as a whole. And once that is moved and seconded, then I will ask members to vote to accept the new candidates for the board of directors. So at the end of that election process, then we will adjourn the business meeting, take a 5-minute break before we start the second portion of this evening's events. Is there anything that you would like me to clarify? No? All right, no further questions. Then I'll begin calling on candidates to introduce themselves. And so please share your name again and why you're interested in joining the CRRC Board of Directors. So the first on the list I have is Sia Thomas.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sia. I work at College Berkeley as the International Student Service.
Sia, would you like to join us so that folks online can hear you? Yes.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Sia. Like, was said earlier, I work at Fleming College at the International Student Services Department. I was previously an international student, and I'm a newcomer and recently a permanent resident of Canada. Yeah. It is a very exciting journey, and I've been a part of Peterborough since like 2018, and I would definitely like to become more involved and, make a little bit of a difference. I mean, even if it's not just by active, at least by listening and understanding, I feel like it would add a little bit more to words, somebody like me who is possibly coming halfway across the world with hopes and dreams and, want to integrate into this community and become members of this community. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. I've worked closely with Debbie and Charmaine in the past, and I've gotten to, kind of meet a lot of people within the community here. So that's just a little bit about me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sia. Can I invite Crystal Scrimshaw to come and join us? She's virtual. Is she in?
Hi, Ani Bonjour. My name is Crystal. I am a community member within Nogojiwanong. I am currently just leaving another meeting, so I'm in the car. So that's why my video is off right now. I'd just like to say that I have been on the board previously. I have actively worked in in social justice issues in Peterborough with events, continuing that tough conversation and dialogue. And I'm, looking to be part of the board again and to continue that important conversation. Miigwech.
Thank you very much, Crystal. Next, I'd like to invite Will Ward to join us.
So much different when you're on this side of the podium. Anyways, my name is Will, and I was born in Mississauga, and I moved to Nogojiwanong, Peterborough when I was 9, and I think going through the middle school system, the high school system in Peterborough was a challenge for me, that I then came to notice that it was the same for most other biracial youth. And I felt as though going through this work, I felt as like much relatability with other people that I have ever had in my life. And I think that feeling is so special because it makes me have a different outlook on my past experience. And that's such a hard thing to have. Currently, I'm a PSW in training, and I'm in my practical piece. And I work at Kawartha World Issue Center. Shout out to Sam Rockroon. Yeah, and I love community. I love learning in community. I love growing in community because I think racism is, as anti-racism, it's an act of public health. It's an act that serves the whole person. And so looking at it from a perspective that hits all the pieces, education, health, economic situation, housing is huge. And so taking the step to like be more involved in, I don't know, what may it be, like Robert's rules or looking at money and bank statements. Like, I think it's all part of the process that is very important in this work. And so, yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Will. Next, I'd like to invite Tricia Johnston up on stage, please.
Hola, or I'm also Tricia. I'm also learning Spanish, so I'm practicing a little bit of my Spanish. Okay. I want to say it's an honor to be here. Charmaine has known me for a while now, and of course, she has approached me a couple times, and of course, I always say, I'm not ready, but I guess now it's my time, and I'm willing to put the time with all the rest of everything that everyone has to do in their lives. I was born in Hong Kong, lived in the US, been in Peterborough for many years, and Peterborough has been a trip. Let's put it that nicely. Good, bad, indifferent. I think Peterborough has grown, but in many ways it has not grown. And as a teacher, as a retired teacher, I have seen many different situations with a lot of international students. I've seen them, coming out of the park in Peterborough, and then they, they come to my drama class and they're all beaten up, that disturbs me. Of course, drama being drama, I'm an arts teacher. My background is in dance, the fine arts. I'm a graduate from York, did my master's. So drama through the arts can, show reflection of where we're at. And I'd like to see more of that somehow brought to our community. I think we have to be carefully taught. And being taught, we're not learned. I mean, we don't learn how to hate. We have to live it. We have to breathe it. We have to learn about it. I'm not saying I am the cat's meow for what is, I think we need to grow as a community. And I like to think that the conversation has started, but we have a long way to go. And this whole pandemic thing has really, I guess, I've, lived in through the school system here. I mean, I've been called ching pies. I've been called everything under the book. And because I'm from a mixed family, I have a brother who's part Japanese, I'm Chinese. I have a brother who's white, blonde hair, blue eyes, and it goes on. But as a family, we were all able to stick together. Of course, you didn't have the tools. Mom always said, well, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And, it's got me into a little bit of trouble with that, but now I'm getting a bit bold, at least to call a spade a spade. So hopefully my contribution is that I can be a voice with many. And I think my mother, if she were to, my mother unfortunately has dementia. She's at St. Joseph Fleming. I would love to tell her I'm sort of doing this in her honor because she has always lived a life of equality and worked with unwedded mothers. We did Out of the Cold. We knew the sister who from Toronto brought it to Peterborough. My mom and I did it together for what, 10 years. And now that, everything in its place. So I guess this is my little contribution now to come forward, and I'd like to see this community thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. A small side note that Tricia's mom, Gwen, was one of the founding community members of the New Canadian Centre. So it's a real honor to be able to share the space with you tonight, Tricia. The next person I'd like to invite on stage is Kojaste Merkiani.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kojasta. Children call me Koji, and I go with that. I really enjoy, and so far I'm really enjoying this gathering, and I'm honored to be here. I'm an early childhood educator. I've been teaching and working with children my entire life, 30 years. I mean, my entire life, you can guess my age now, so, or close. But yeah, working with children, I feel like our focus should be children, and educating children is where we can all start. However, that's not the only reason I'm here. I feel like through learning more about racism and things like the hate among people, I feel that this is important to educate children, and learning for me is part of the goal. However, that's not the only reason. My two children, when we moved to Canada 13 years ago with my son, I'm a very people person. I was not feeling any being excluded. However, my son was had the same experience in high school, and it didn't stop there. And he went through a lot of identity issues, and to the point where he was really, really mentally ill. And unfortunately, 2 years ago, I lost my son because he just couldn't cope with the whole situation. So mental health, as Will mentioned, I believe should be our focus. And my hope is that I can raise children who actually give and take more love from community. And so this is for my son. So Amir, this is for you, and I hope that I can give something regarding to what has happened to my son. I'm from Iran, moved to Kingston. Comparing to Kingston, Peterborough, I feel like it's a nice place, but I think the numbers say a different thing. But anyways, being in Peterborough for me is a privilege. I have met wonderful people so far. So Charmaine helped me and introduced me to CRRC, and I hope that I can do my part and contribute. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Koji, for bravely sharing Amir's story with us. The last person on the slate I'd like to call on is online. It's Steph McLeody.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Steph Milady. I work at the Yes Shelter for Youth and Families. I do office work there. I have a lot of history and work experience in youth justice and youth homelessness, and I can see how race affects that and who's coming through the doors. I grew up in Peterborough as a white person, and I was very privileged, and I recognize that now, but growing up, I didn't realize it. And I think the part of the problem with Peterborough is a lot of people need to realize the privilege they have, and that you know, well, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's the bubble, it's not a bubble that exists. So I'm really hoping to be an ally and advocate and support and help on the back end with financial reports and approving things. So everyone can do their work and I can help support that, and I can go to rallies and shout and do whatever else you need me to do. I'm totally in for that. So I appreciate this opportunity and I look forward to meeting you all eventually one day in person and working with you all.
Thank you very much, Steph, and thank you to all the board nominees for sharing your story and introducing yourselves to the CRRC community. So now that we've heard from all the candidates, members will vote to either accept or reject the slate by raising your blue voting card or using the raise hand function if you're joining us on Zoom. So please, can I get a motion to accept the slate as presented? This is Jordan. Who's moved by Jordan. Can I get a member to second the motion? It's Charmaine. Thank you. So those in favor of accepting the new slate? Any rejection of the new slate? Any abstaining? Motion is passed and approved, and welcome to the new slate of directors that is joining the leadership of the CRRC. Based on the stories that I've just heard and that everyone's just heard tonight, I think there's a lot to look forward to in the board that is joining you. So this concludes the elections of CRRC's Board of Directors for 2022. Congratulations and welcome to all. All elected members will be contacted this week by the very efficient CRRC administration for follow-up and meeting information for your first meeting. So next I will call Charmaine up to adjourn the business portion of the meeting, and then we'll take a 5-minute break after that before we start the panel. Charmaine?
Thank you again, everyone who's able to come out to our AGM. Thank you so much, and thank you to the board and Czarina for the lovely picture. Really appreciate it. Just in going, when I first got involved with CRRC, especially living in Peterborough, all white space, I found coming to the board meetings, I felt these were my people. I felt it was a place that I would not feel judged as a Black person, and I could let my hair down. And my hair was longer at that time. No, it's got it. So there was a lot of good things with CRRCs. We had our challenges, but I would say a lot of good. And definitely, as was said by some of the new board members and just in general, Peterborough is a growing place. It's becoming more diverse, and we have to continue having these courageous conversations. And because we are right now facing a lot of hatred, as we have witnessed with NDP Jagmeet Singh coming, the incident, the racist comments on homophobia, comments on our school walls in the recent year. So there is a lot of work, and I leave you guys with a very good board, a very awesome coordinator, Czarina, and just thank you so much that you've taken this time, and it's now time for your 5-minute break. Thank you.
So may not have time for questions and answers, but at least we'll be able to hear from all the speakers. So yeah, everybody can take a break. You can go outside and get water. We'd like to return for the speaking portion of the event tonight. So if everyone can get back to their seats. And I will call up Yvonne Lai to introduce our first speaker.
Welcome back, everyone. If you've just joined us online, welcome to you too. I'd like to commence the second portion of this evening, the panel discussion on Voices for Action Against Racism in Peterborough. We are running a little bit behind schedule, so I will ask you to refer a lot to the description and bios of our speakers that's already shared in the Eventbrite page in order to save time. But for now, I would like to invite Councillor Kemi Acapo to open this evening to share some opening remarks. Kemi?
Hello, good evening. How's my sound? Thumbs up? Great. Okay, yes, hello, good evening, everyone. I'm here wearing two hats today, though Debbie would tell me that I'm always myself, but I am wearing two hats. So right now I'm wearing my City of Peterborough hat, which I will take off momentarily and just put on my regular Kemi hat. Yes, my name is Kemi Acapo. I am City Councillor for the City of Peterborough, and I'm so honored and so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And congratulations to CRRC on 40 years of being in Peterborough. That's amazing work. Thank you. Thank you. So CRRC started, I believe it was officially started in 1983, but I believe it was 1981 that really sparked the reason for CRRC's existence. And that was because there was a Nigerian student who was facing a lot of harassment here in Peterborough, and other racialized students, students from Africa in particular, were also being harassed and being attacked on the streets. So the city council at that time and the mayor at that time essentially said, we have to do something about this. This isn't okay. So they held sort of like a committee to address it. And then throughout the years that transformed into CRRC. And the city is very proud to continue to support this work. I personally would like to see an increase in the funding that we give to CRRC, but 1 year at a time, one budget at a time. But really would like to thank CRRC and particularly Charmaine for all the good work that you've done over the last 40 years and the work that you will be leading. And I'm sure will be excellent. And to the new board, congratulations. Thank you for stepping up. It's really incredible work that you're doing. And it is behind the scenes work, but it's just as important as frontline work. So thank you. And finally, just to let folks know that the city has hired for the first time ever our first diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, Reem Ali, who is doing a fantastic work. And please, if you do see her, please thank her. You know, COVID air hug, don't actually hug her. She's doing really important work and really hard work. So yeah, on behalf of the city, congratulations. Very happy to be here, and thank you for the invitation and thank you for the hard work that you do. Okay, now I'm taking off my city hat and putting on my Kemi hat. I was asked to speak for 5 minutes and I don't think that's gonna happen, sorry guys. But I'll try and make my point quickly. But I'll start with a story. I'm a Yoruba woman, and our culture, we're storytellers. So I'll start with a story. So I have 3 older brothers. I'm the youngest of 4, and I have 3 older brothers whom I love dearly. And growing up, my 3 older brothers wore glasses and I didn't. I never thought anything weird about it, but you know, I wanted to be like my brothers. I wanted to do what they were doing. So one year, my brother Femi, who's just before me, was going to the optometrist to get his eyes checked. And you know, I begged my mom, I was like, please let me go. I also want to get my eyes checked. Like, I need glasses. And she, you know, took the easiest path and just said yes, as opposed to trying to convince me to stay home. So I went and I got tested. And guess what? I needed glasses. I was right. I advocated for my needs. Did I actually think I needed glasses? No, I just wanted to be like everybody else in my family who wore glasses. Though when I did get those glasses, my life changed because all of a sudden I realized that the world that I was experiencing was not actually the world as it was. Apparently, you're supposed to be able to see the definition of things. When you look at them, you're not supposed to be squinting all the time. You know, trees, leaves, you know, you're supposed to see the jagged edges and not just these green blobs. Not everybody has to sit in the front row of the class to be able to see what the teacher writes on the blackboard. Apparently, some people can see that from far away, but I didn't know that until I got my glasses. So I had normalized all these things in my life about not being able to see, mainly because I didn't know any different or any better. Why do I tell you this story? I'll tell you by telling you another story. I moved to Peterborough approximately 18 years ago. I came here at the age of 16. I came here with my own set of ideas, my own way of seeing the world. I came here as a 16-year-old Black, queer, cis immigrant woman to Peterborough. And as many has said, not an easy experience. That being said, it's only been recently that I've realized how challenging my experience in Peterborough has been, because I was walking through without glasses. I just thought, well, this is normal. This is what everybody experiences. All these challenges that I'm facing are what everybody is facing. And it wasn't until I started to do my own learning that I learned about certain things, such as the term misogynoir, which for those who are not familiar is misogyny mixed with racism, particularly towards Black people. So I, as a Black woman, experienced misogynoir in Peterborough without realizing that that was what I was experiencing. So I started doing some learning. I started going to events. I took some workshops and I started learning. I put on some glasses and I saw Peterborough as it was. I've experienced a lot in Peterborough: love, joy, excitement, growth, and learning. But I've also experienced racism, and that is just the reality of the world that we live in. So why did I tell you the story about my glasses, and why do I tell you about my experiences in Peterborough? It's because I want to issue an invitation to those who are in this room, an invitation to people who are watching online, and an invitation to anyone who lives, studies, works in Nogojiwanong, Peterborough. I invite you to go and get your eyes tested. I invite you to go get a pair of glasses because you need to put on your glasses. Peterborough is a city I love dearly, but has for several decades refused to see what is in front of them, refused to see the racism that exists in this community. I hope most people are familiar with the term white supremacy. Peterborough is not exempt from that. White supremacy is the air that we breathe. So it's not something to be guilted about or to be shamed about. It's the air that we breathe. Of course, it's going to be a part of you, but there's ways to clean the air, ways to stop polluting the air. So I invite you as Peterborough to put on some glasses and start to clean the air. There are lots of ways to do this, and I've only got I've already taken up my 5 minutes, so I won't stand here and tell you how to do that, but refer to the CRRC. They certainly are a good place to start. But yeah, put on those glasses, and you know what? When I was a kid and I got my glasses, I got what I thought were the coolest glasses, and in hindsight, they were not. So when you, Peterborough, put on your glasses and you see Peterborough for what it is, yeah, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be uncomfortable. You may not know all the right words to say. It's a process of learning. And 5 years from now, you might look back and be like, oh my gosh, somebody let me walk around with those glasses? Gross. That's okay, because that is what you had at the time that you had them. You can always upgrade, like I did. So yeah, Peterborough, this is my invitation to you. Please go get your eyes checked, and please go get some glasses, because you really do need to see what's going on around you. And before you can really make meaningful change, you really need to be able to see it and acknowledge it. So that is my invitation to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Kemi, for that timely reminder. Next up, I would like to welcome and invite Peterborough's first poet laureate and the featured artist for this evening, Sarah Lewis, to come up on stage for an opening performance. Sarah.
Right. Hello, Amin. Sarah Nadijnakas, Curve Lake Nandunjaba. My name is Sarah Lewis. I'm from Curve Lake First Nation, and I've also lived in Nogojiwanong. It's been a lovely evening and very inspiring. I just want to say Chimigwech to everyone who shared their vulnerable stories and who continue to be vulnerable. That's what spoken word is about. That's why I love this art form. To me, art is activism, and yeah, historically, Indigenous people, my people, have been silenced. So I naturally gravitated towards this medium of expression and fell in love with it. So this poem speaks to that, and it's called More Than a Poem, and tells a story of how your voice can not only alter perceptions, but hopefully and potentially change behavior. So, yeah. My mind is an arena of ancient lost scrolls my ancestors hid from calloused cross-building hands. Teachings, truth, land, and culture wrap around teeth and spit into this mic, fighting to be heard. Oral tradition and storytelling is embedded in my blood they called savage. And I live up to the title, ravaging these stanzas, all a part of creator's plan, Zama, make her proud. Know that I'm not known to sugarcoat the truth, rhyme genocide with something pretty and fruitful to make your ears dance or sweeten your palate, I call it like it is. They put pesticides on these plants, killing off what was unfamiliar was their plan B, sprayed onto our family trees. Because you see, my grandfather's skin intimidated map makers, poets, encyclopedists, and historians could not compete with the rich traditions, knowledge, stories, and history carried in his creases. Jealous of his relationship to the land, would never put a hand on or flagpole in her, and for that she trusted him with her children. us. Dear wise one, my grandmother says, filling the space between third eye and heart chakra, you are descendant of moss, fungi, bug, bark, and water. So stand up for your family, stand up for the future generations. Your voice is medicine, antibiotic for viral colonialism, the pandemic that no one talks about. You're the water after the drought, after we've been sucked dry of our resources, of our autonomy, sucked dry of the words we wanted to say but didn't have the courage to. Quench the thirst of the young minds. Plead they stand up to these greedy, needy stealing of unceded territory terrorists. Their voices, their raised fists are gifts. This is more than hand to pen to paper. This is more than a collection of poems or 15 minutes of fame. These words connect to resurrect the silenced ones, expose the violent acts on mother tongues, the mouths held shut by wooden planks 6 feet under. They're the fire that will burn these planks to embers. They speak through you and me, a revelry of reunited elders stand behind you and me. And you know, the irony is that these savages were never the ones with the finger on the trigger, but always behind the barrel of the machine that bites. But my poetry is a peaceful protest, a right. I don't need guns to blow you away. So please don't shoot the messenger. I put my tobacco down, pray that these grounds return to us, the same ones they preyed on the grounds of helping us, took our trees, turned them into an imaginary currency that I now have to dedicate my entirety to achieve. I decolonized their syllabus to living, burn their standardized tests I was never able to pass, laugh at the man who calls himself a philanthropist, immerse myself in his system and become his therapist, telling me his mommy issues, toxic relationship with Mother Earth, but she's not taking a shit no more. She knows her worth. You want to give back to the people, be a big man? Here, read this poem I wrote and give us back our land. This is activism. This is speaking silence into riot. The stories are braided in my hair. Poetry is my meditation, my prayer. Can be found after my father's death, throughout my addiction, at the Wet'suwet'en protest, the moment I fall in love with life again. Because when a crack pipe becomes a pen, a eulogy becomes a poem, a hate crime becomes a rally, this is more than a few words that rhyme. This is a lifeline. So will you share your gift? Future you is asking. Will you pick up when it calls you? Miigwech.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I have to admit, I'm a bit starstruck now between Kemi and Sarah being here, two of my big idols here in Peterborough. Anyway, so as I said earlier, we're running behind, so I will cut out a lot of the bios. I would like to let you know that for the theme of tonight's presentation, the team at CRRC has worked together with our panelists to really frame the discussion tonight or the presentation tonight by asking them to reflect on their individual contributions towards anti-racism in Peterborough in relation to who they are, their lived experiences, the work they have done, that they are doing, and that they look forward to doing here in Peterborough. So each panelist will be speaking for 10 minutes. And because we might not have time for question and answer at the end of it, I invite you to send an email to CRRC if you have a particular question that you would like a panelist to address, and that they will get back to you. So for the first speaker, we have Danielle Adderley. Danielle is the founder of the Trent Association of Black Students and a member of Trent's Anti-Racism Task Force. Please all give a welcome to Danielle.
Good evening, everyone. I must say I am starstruck as well. I still have chills, so bear with me. So my name is Danielle. I'm the founder of the Trent Association of Black Students. I'll try to make this short so that maybe we can have just 2 minutes for a Q&A, but bear with me. So when I hear the phrase Voices for Action Against Racism in Peterborough, I'm brought back to May 2020 and the political and social unrest that was brought about by the heartless murder of George Floyd. It was a moment of so much pain, especially for the Black community. And to this day, that pain is still there and growing, especially this weekend as we watched what happened in Buffalo. On the other side of that pain, however, I also think about the people that came together from countries all around the world to stand up and protest the actions of Derek Chauvin and the actions of so many policemen and white supremacists who were not caught on camera and did not have the media attention. While this unity may seem like a very long stretch for Peterborough, I am trying to start off on a hopeful note, and this AGM alone is a step in the right direction. So as mentioned, I do have some past experience with anti-racism and anti-oppressive work, mainly in academic institutions. The ones I'm going to speak about today is my experience through TABS, which is the Trent Association of Black Students. I'll refer to it as TABS going forward, which led me to my position on the Trent's Anti-Racism Task Force. The idea of TABS came about in November 2019, but in the social unrest of May 2020, that's where it was truly created. Me, like many other Black individuals, watched the video enraged and looked desperately for a way that we can make a change in a system that so desperately wants us all to fail. When I began speaking to others about TABS and wondering if this was something that was even wanted, I got a resounding amount of positive feedback, which urged me to continue on in the work. While we did get a lot of support in the beginning, just as the media coverage of the protests slowly came to a halt, after all the hype faded away, the amount of support TABS got slowed down as well. But something that we did is we kept the same momentum, pushing as hard as we did in the beginning. And that's something that I'd encourage everyone in this line of work to remember. My work wearing two of the hats I mentioned earlier included me starting the uncomfortable conversations about race and helping others take the first step to have these conversations. Something that was really important to me as I created TABS was to create a safe space on campus and to ensure that BIPOC students felt empowered to stick up for themselves and to address forms of racism while also making sure they're doing it in a safe way. I have CRRC and Angela Connors to help for giving me those tools that I needed to give the tools to others. 1 second, I lost my spot. So it was in those workshops that CRRC held where I learned how to navigate conversations around race. And that really gave me the confidence to continue the conversation in a room full of upper administration and the task force. That for me was a bit daunting when I first started, taking into consideration the power dynamic in a room full of upper administration as a student. But a quote that I often hear is, "Discomfort is a catalyst for growth." And this worked both ways for me. While it was very important to have these uncomfortable conversations about race and oppression, it was also a quote that I had to take personally. On the days I felt like my voice didn't matter in a room full of senior administration, and on the days I felt overwhelmed and quite honestly tired of having the same conversation, this is the quote that stuck with me. My experience in these two roles may seem like a big feat, and they are accomplishments that I'm proud of. I won't deny that. However, these are not the only work that aligns with voices of action against racism. Simply questioning a microaggression or speaking up when you see others being oppressed, subtly or directly, are the voices that are needed to combat racism in Peterborough. The first step is addressing and admitting that racism is very prevalent in the city. And while that may seem so simple, there are so many people who simply do not see it or don't care to. 1 second. Okay. Even through my experience with the task force, there have been people who simply thought it was a waste of time and resources and thought it was a left way of thinking. To be able to create a safer, more inclusive community for BIPOC individuals in Peterborough, we first need to understand that right now, it simply is not safe and it's not inclusive. While I'm not sure I can speak directly to the progress being made in the broader Peterborough community, I do think there's been some progress being made addressing racism in the Trent community. My past few years at Trent, I've noticed there's been a lot more people having the uncomfortable conversations, and I believe that that's one of the first steps to addressing racism and oppressive systems. However, that's only the first step. Action still needs to be taken. While there definitely has been progress, there's still a lot more work to do. The international student population at Trent is steadily increasing, and so many of my peers share along with me the sentiment of not feeling like they belong in Peterborough. There needs to be an increase in resources that are offered, not only at Trent, but in the broader community, to create opportunities for BIPOC students and create a community outside of Trent's campus. As I've recently graduated from Trent and I've stepped down from being president of TABS, advice that I would give BIPOC youth getting into activism is to listen to yourself and to your feelings first. While it can be very rewarding work, the work of anti-racism, specifically being a leader in that space, can be very emotionally draining and intense to take on every day. It's important that you are doing whatever works for you to refill your cup when it's getting low and take time to step back and care for yourself. I can now admit that coming to the end of my last term as president, I felt very burnt out and I briefly lost the passion that I had for the work that I was doing. The thing that helped me in that instance was actually an event during Black History Month that was led by Black Student Peer Support, where they brought in Sandy Hudson, who's one of the organizers of Black Lives Matter Toronto. In that session, she spoke about navigating Black joy and the things she uses to help her when she feels overwhelmed. A piece of advice she shared was to always remember an instance when the hard work paid off, an instance where you saw the results of your activism. For me, that instance was the day the Freedom Lounge opened. And the Freedom Lounge is a designated space for BIPOC students on campus. That moment was so beautiful for me because I remember the day a group of friends and I came up with the idea, ignited with passion from being surrounded by student leaders from all around Canada at the Canadian Federation of Students General Meeting. The same day and in the same room was where the idea of TABS was created. So to my BIPOC youth, when you're feeling tired, and believe me, you will, look back on a day where it all came into place, all the rallying, all the emails, the meetings, and everything in between. Remember when it paid off. Remember the feeling of happiness and joy that came over you, even if only for a moment. That feeling of joy is what will drive you, but will help you continue when you're feeling discouraged. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle, for your very inspiring words. Next, I would like to invite John Lyons to join us virtually. John is a familiar name in the community who has many years of experience with the Peterborough Police Services and also as an ally in anti-racism efforts in the community. John?
Thank you, Yvonne. And I'd like to start by just saying I really wish I could be there in person, but I'm currently sitting in my fourth day of my COVID protocol. I happen to be lucky enough to get it on Friday, and I would suggest that anyone that hasn't had it to please avoid it. But I would like to start by thanking all that have attended here this evening, either in person or virtually. I'm honored to be here, and I'm truly humbled by this opportunity to share some of my insights with you. I would like first to say that Acting Chief Farquharson sends his regrets. He wished he could be here, but he's at an opioid meeting in the downtown this evening. So looking into the Voices for Action Against Racism in Peterborough, and one of the first things I came across that just resonated with me was a quote by Martin Luther King III, and that was, "If you're tired of hearing about racism, imagine how tired some people are of experiencing it." The reason it resonates because the first part of that is, if you're tired of hearing about racism, that is people like me. That's white people who, in those microaggressions, saying that, "Oh no, you're not going to play the race card again, are you?" And not realizing about how tired people are of experiencing it, and not understanding it because you can't put it into context, nor can you actually imagine what that would be like. So the voices of those experiencing racism have been shouting for many generations. But what about people like me that were born with privilege? I'm male, I'm white. Where are the voices of those that are not directly impacted, but silently stood by and watched and also partook? I come from an institution that is traditionally associated to systemic racism, as much as Brenda Lucky, for the RCMP commissioner, said there wasn't systemic racism in the RCMP. That's just not true. So instead of sitting back and using that privilege, instead what I did in about 17 years ago, in the mid 2000s, I started a journey into to educating and understanding what was going on in our community. Initially, I was on a liaison committee with the queer community. And you might wonder, well, what does that have to do with tonight? Well, that's what started me into a plethora of training and seminar initiatives regarding hate bias as well. It was not only focused on the LGBTQ communities, but crossed over into racism, biases, and religious persecution. I was becoming more aware of the injustices that existed in our community, province, country, and the world at large. I became acutely aware that the profession that I had been engaged in for about 20 years at the time was a trigger to many that had suffered these injustices. My ignorance implored me to learn more and to become less apathetic and more engaged in what was happening and had been happening my whole life regarding hate bias and racism. In 2009, I internally produced a reporting mechanism within the police service for hate bias crime and hate bias incident reporting. It was made mandatory that all crimes and incidents required a report that were that had criteria associated to them for each report. In the past, the incidents, those racial slurs and that type of thing, were not reported, and there was never any record of that. So essentially, now there was a reporting mechanism in place. Due to the increase in reports, I would suggest Peterborough exploded onto the scene under the reported hate crime index, where we were recorded as had the third highest rate of hate bias incident / crime in Canada in 2009. I can vividly remember the then chief yelling at me, "What have you done?" And I simply advised them that because we now had a proper reporting mechanism in place, that we were capturing more information on a chronically underreported societal problem. That was led me to attend the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services in Toronto, the Policing Standards Advisory Committee Hate Crime Working Group, and presented to that group in Toronto in March of 2010, because they could not understand why Peterborough, what the big problem here was. And I said that it's not just a Peterborough problem, it's a societal problem that we have not been good at, nor has policing been good at recording or reporting hate bias crime, hate bias incidents. And what has changed in the years since? Very little, unfortunately. Racism is still very much a part of our community and our society at large. This is evidenced by the 2020 Hate Crime Index, which was referenced earlier by Charmaine, which Peterborough is pegged with the highest rate in Canada, with nearly the triple the national average rate. To try and navigate this communal problem, we need more voices to be heard. Not just voices of those that have experienced racism, but more so by those that haven't. In data prepared by Trent University Research in 2019, it was found that Peterborough is roughly 94% Caucasian. Peterborough Police Service is approximately 96% Caucasian. These are the voices that need to speak clearly in defiance of racism. These voices are most certainly not to overtake those that have unfortunately had lived experience, and it's not to take place of those that are at these podiums today, but it's to provide support and advocacy. And so when I look back at that, the Voices for Action Against Racism in Peterborough, it has to be a collaboration. It has to be a concerted and joint effort. We can't have any one group. It has to be all groups willing to go to the table and to talk and to figure out ways in which we can look at and address the issues that we're seeing in our community and our communities at large. Again, I appreciate being here, and I very much am humbled to be able to speak to you this evening, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, John, and we hope that you recover very, very soon. So our last speaker for this evening is Patricia Wilson. Patricia is the founder of the Diverse Nature Collective and the Community Conservation Coordinator at the Kawartha Land Trust. Looking forward to hearing from you, Patricia.
Hello, thank you for having me here today. This is awesome, and it's great to hear. It's great to be in this space. It's great to actually be out with folks. It's great to hear from some amazing speakers and also be in a room full of a lot of people that I admire. So I really appreciate being asked to be here today. I know we are short on time, so I'm just gonna wing it. I'm just gonna cut a little bit out of my speech, but I just want to start off by talking a little bit about my journey and what brought me to Peterborough. So I've lived in Peterborough for 12 years, and I moved here from Durham to go to Trent, and I never went back. I fell in love with the vibrancy of our city and our proximity to beautiful nature areas. I am a nature lover at heart, someone who loves the environment and cares deeply about environmental protection and wildlife. And I've always had this deep love and appreciation for the outdoors. So it was at Trent where I fell in love with ecology and conservation biology, and that led me to a career in this field. I didn't start wanting to be in conservation biology. I wanted to be a vet. I wanted to save the animals. But through my academic journey at Trent, I learned about conservation biology, fell in love with that, and realized that I can play a role in protecting ecological spaces for wildlife that I care for. And so I've been working in the environmental sector for over 6 years. I've worked in a couple of different nonprofits. I have volunteered within this community. I've worked in a lot of areas of this community as well. And I've just really grown to love the environmental field and sector, but it has not been lost on me through my studies. I was a Trent student, and also I went to Fleming. And through working in this sector, recognizing the lack of diversity that there is in the environmental sector, the lack of diverse representation and voices in many areas of our community, but in particular, I'm speaking to the environmental field and my experiences there, being a racialized woman in this space. So noticing a huge lack of diversity, I think, before the pandemic, I went to the last kind of AGM meeting with the Ontario Land Trust Alliance. So it's a big Land Trust Alliance conference that happens every year for all different land trusts across Ontario. And so I'm working for a land trust, we attended, and I couldn't help but notice that I'm the only racialized voice in these spaces. I'm the only woman of color. I don't see other folks that look like me. It's usually myself and my good friend Gary Pritchard, who is an Indigenous consultant that comes out to these meetings to do consulting work with the with land trusts. And it has been frustrating, and it's something that has been recognized for a long time. I mean, if you look through a lot of different environmental organizations, if you look through their board of directors or their trustees or their staff, it's a sea of white faces, right? Typically older white faces, right? And so you don't have representation, in leadership positions or meaningful positions. Maybe you'll get some volunteers that are a little bit more diverse, but you never have these folks as decision-making roles. And I've been really frustrated for years about this lack of diverse representation and wanting to see more folks that look like me. And I've mentioned this to people before, and I've been met with people saying, oh, well, Peterborough is very white. There isn't any diversity here. Or I get comments like, Black people don't like to be outside in nature. So you get these stereotypes that are perpetuated and things, almost justifications for why we haven't moved away from the status quo, right? And I was really angry. And it wasn't until the pandemic, with everything going on, both in Canada and the United States. I mean, we have the big Black Lives Matter movement happening in the States, you know, and George Floyd's death, but also, you know, Wet'suwet'en and the pipelines going in and the protesting happening here and the violence that has been happening here and being brought to light, right? It was very upsetting times. And, you know, it really made me feel so small and helpless, as many of people I'm sure feel, and wanting to do something. And so I was thinking a lot about what I can do within my own community or in my area of work that can make a difference or can kind of work towards solving some of these pretty complex issues. And so I last year started Diverse Nature Collective, which is a Black and by BIPOC operated organization that is dedicated to creating space for racialized individuals who want to get outside in nature, who want to be part of the environmental movement and be part of the conversation. We lead workshops and events that are organized by racialized folks for racialized folks, and it's to help create space and awareness for us and to build a sense of community. Some of the biggest feedback that I've gotten from people as I've started connecting and networking over the last year and working with other groups doing this work in other cities has been that they had never felt like this space was for them. And they've always felt excluded, even when they've tried to join their local hiking groups or their local environmental organizations. The space is not for them. It was not made, like their voices were never heard. They were passed up for more leadership roles within these organizations, and they didn't feel comfortable. They felt othered, and they felt like their experiences, you know, didn't matter. And so, you know, that just speaks to a larger issue of the lack of representation that we have and the need for it. So this year with KLT, with Kawartha Land Trust, we actually ran our first ever Black History Month event. And I was so excited to not only plan this event, but lead this event. And it was a Black History Month hike. And it was a hike that was showcasing Black excellence, past, present, and future in conservation and environmentalism. And I was very excited about this. But then I was also very nervous. So as I was leading up to the event, trying to do research and figure out things I was going to say, I realized in all my time in school and in this field, I had never learned about other racialized folks doing this work, in particular Black people. And I know that we've contributed to conservation, and I know this through what I've read and through examples of folks in the United States, but in a Canadian context, you almost don't hear about it. And so it took a really long time for me to get information. I actually reached out to a professor, Cheryl Telusking from Metropolitan University, and she wrote a book on environmental justice and racism in Canada. And it's actually an amazing read because it explains why in Canada we haven't really talked about racialized contributions to the environmental field. And I think it has a lot to do with the lens in which we speak about Canada. We talk about ourselves being multicultural, and we take a pride in that. And anytime we talk about racism or violence, we're referring to the United States, and we're like, oh no, we're not like them. We're not like them. It's not as bad here. It's not happening here. But it is. And, you know, it's tough because we like to say we're not like the United States and we're more advanced than that. But in a lot of ways, we aren't, because we're not recognizing the racism that's happening here in our communities, you know, and that exists and has existed for a long time. You know, February was Black History Month, and a lot of folks were talking about Canada's role and in the Underground Railroad, and how we were a safe refuge for slaves. But did you know that we also had slaves here in Canada for 200 years? And that the Underground Railroad was in existence for only 30 years. So that's only a tiny piece of our Canadian history. And it's a lot larger than that. So, you know, it's the erasure of these histories and the perpetuation of us as being better than United States or other places where this violence is happening and, oh, it doesn't happen here, or we're doing all of this great work. But we're not, and we need to be doing more because it does happen here and it does exist here. You know, I was so happy and excited for this first Black History Month event. My organization that I work for has been around for 21 years. This was the first time that we recognized it, right? And after that event, I went with my partner to the LCBO and we were grabbing a bottle of wine. We were having a family dinner afterwards. And I got in line because he was taking far too long picking out wine. And I am waiting and waiting and the line's moving up. And so I start letting folks go ahead of me. Oh, I'm so sorry. Like my boyfriend's taking forever. You go ahead, you go ahead. And then there's a woman that is in front of me, or that was behind me. I was telling her to go, and another man walks up and she turns to him and tries to push him along over to me. And I said, oh yeah, go ahead. And so she's like, oh, I thought that was your boyfriend. So he was a Black man. And she assumed that he was my boyfriend. And I get this a lot. So I've experienced a ton of different microaggressions. And I was just like, nope, that's not my boyfriend. You know, whatever. She's making a mistake. Fine. I'm really not going to see it as something that's racist. And then she says, oh, well, he should be. And I was so taken aback. And I turned to her and I was like, excuse me? And I said, why? And we stared at each other for a few moments. And she knew what she had said and she knew why it wasn't okay. She knew why she assumed that this man was my boyfriend. She assumed because we were both Black, right? And she knows why she said that what she said in the way that she said it too. It wasn't in a nice way. And she thought on her answer and she said, oh, his hair. And I said, okay. And I walked away. So it was hard because that day I'd come off of like this great, incredible high for making progress in something that I'm very passionate about within my organization. And, you know, we had like 30 people registered. People were so stoked to learn and come out and engage with this. And then to experience that is like, it is upsetting. And that's just one example, one of the more mild examples of some of the racism I've experienced in this city we call home. And I thought a lot about what I was going to come here and say today, you know, and I really struggled. And I struggled because there is so much to talk about. There are so many intricacies and intersectionalities to consider when we think about racism and race. And to me, racism is so broad. And from my perspective, we've been speaking about racism for such a long time. We've tried to address racial discrimination and advocate for racial equality for hundreds of years. You know, Juneteenth is coming up, right? And we're talking about, for those of you who don't know, it's a holiday in the United States that celebrates the freedom of enslaved African Americans. And, you know, I think a lot about the civil rights movement that happened in the States. It was a 20-year fight, 1940s through to the end of the 1960s. And then I think about the history of racism in Canada. I'm sure many of you guys might know this, but, you know, we had segregation here too. The last segregated school closed in you know, the early 80s. You know, the last residential school closed in 1997. Our Charter of Rights and Freedoms was only created in 1982. You know, so we often imagine Canada as being multicultural and rich in diversity. We pride ourselves for being different from the United States, but we're very similar in a lot of ways. And I want to ask, where are we now? 60 years after the civil rights movement. People were marching for our rights. People were dying for our rights, right? You know, 40 years after the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms was signed, right? All this lobbying and activism work. It's exhausting. There's so many people who have come before me, died before me doing this work, you know, large scale, small scale. And, you know, have we made much progress in this fight? I don't know. I like to think so, and I want to stay positive. I feel a lot of comfort in connecting with others that are doing this work. Throughout the pandemic, I got the opportunity to connect with a lot of people online and to start finding other voices doing this work in different areas and learning what they're doing and connecting and building each other up. And also learning about the hidden histories of racialized contributions and the intersectionalities that have, that there is in our society, and that have guided the building of our society, and accomplishments from other racialized people. It's so refreshing to see other people that look like me, that are doing this work in the outdoors, or there's advocating for this work. It's so important, and it's not in our textbooks. I went to university for 5 years. I went to college for 2 years. Nothing in our textbooks talks about, environmental justice in the United States, environmental racism here in Canada. None of that's talked about, so we often don't think it exists. So racism is complicated. Its existence is embedded systemically within our society, our culture, and our history. And it's hard to think of one solution to this problem. It's complex, or to separate it out as if it's a target that we can achieve, because here we are, and we're still something that we're talking about, right? But I do think that it starts with active allyship and education. I think that to be an active ally can't just mean saying you're not racist, or putting a statement on your website, or a land acknowledgement on your website and saying that you aren't racist, right? When your organization's board and trustees are mainly a sea of white faces, when your makeup of your businesses are mostly white faces, you need to ask yourself why. And like Kemi mentioned earlier, you need to put your glasses on. You need to see why, right? We need to face the hard truths. We need to be active allies and support folks in our community doing this work and lead this work too. It's exhausting. A lot of my friends that I've talked to who are doing this work are exhausted. We're tired. It's a lot. People have been doing this work for a long time, and we get burnt out, and then we pass the torch to someone else. We need support from our allies in our communities. Education needs to go beyond teaching white people about their privilege and racial biases. People need to be taught about the hidden histories of racism in Canada, but they also need to be taught a lot of the amazing accomplishments and contributions that racialized people have had in our society, both past and present, and don't get recognized for, because there is so much. I think about people in our own community doing this work, creating spaces, advocating for change. My good friend Zawena Gray, she's a Trent student here, and she is hiking the Bruce Trail right now. And upon completion, she will be the first Black woman to have completed that journey. It's amazing, and it needs to be talked about. And I'm excited to tell my children and future generations about the amazing people that I've met doing this work, talk about this work, and to see it in literature, to see it being taught, because it is so important. My advice that I would give to the BIPOC individuals doing this work or wanting to lend their voices to social justice advocacy, or even make change within their own area, within your group. You can do this within your school, within your hobbies, within your own city or community. And the advice I'd like to give to you is to connect with your community. There is strength and healing in community, and collaborate with others doing this work to share that load, because it can be extremely heavy. Building each other up, sharing resources, and amplifying each other's voices is an act of resilience. We are stronger together, and there are power in numbers, and together we can make our voices heard. Thank you.
Anybody else want to do a wow? Wow, what a way to end off the evening. Thank you very much to our amazing speakers. Unfortunately, we will not be able to have time to take questions, but I do invite you, if you have specific questions for the speakers, to send your questions by email to Czarina at zarina@racerelationspeterborough.org, and she will forward them to the speakers and hopefully get a response back to get back to you. So thank you, everyone. It has been an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure to be part of this evening with you. I will now pass the mic back to Czarina to close the evening. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone, and for holding steady as we went over time, but I think for good reason. And it's definitely time very well spent with all of you today. I just want to let folks virtually know that my laptop had tapped out. So if there is anything coming through, just send it to CRRC-AGM 2022, and then that will get passed to me. That would go to Ben Wolf, our tech. Yeah, so I'm so grateful for all of the voices that had contributed specifically to today's event, but for all of those who couldn't be represented here. I think just in echoing what everyone else had said, it's those day-to-day voices that are speaking out against racism that's making a difference in our community. And this is work that's not going to stop, not in my generation, not that I can tell, but as long as we continue to do that work and support each other and care for each other in the ways that this work truly needs, we can pass it on to the next generation with a much lighter load, I'm sure. So with that said, I'll just close the evening tonight by saying goodbye to everybody, but also for those of us in person, if board members and speakers could stay back just for pictures, it would be wonderful. Otherwise, I'll let y'all go. Thank you, everyone.